2 weeks ago, a Reddit post started making its way throughout the action figure collecting community, stating that there would be big changes coming to Super7, and more specifically that Brian Flynn, the head of the company, would be out as the final say on which products get made, as well as what kind of aesthetic or articulation schemes we might expect from these figures. Unlike some of the stuff that I covered with Haya last week, I didn't really want to cover this one because it was just a post on the internet from an unverified source. I thought that it would just go quietly into the night, which is not what ended up happening. Big outlets picked it up like Toy News International, and I was starting to get a lot of comments from folks asking me to talk about this subject. There were many folks who were rejoicing that Brian Flynn would be out as the person making the calls, and they were calling him Lion Brian, which, okay, sure. It's a little bit surprising to me how much traction this post gained, especially because there's information in there that led to me having quite a few questions, which I'll talk about in just a second. Brian has officially responded to this Reddit post in his new interview with Phoebes, posted I think earlier this week, and I'll link it down in the description so you can see in the first 3 minutes of the video what his official response is. And now that Brian has publicly responded to it, I would like to talk about my thoughts on this post, as well as how I actually contacted the person who wrote it and the conversation that we had following. So one important factor to note about this post is that this person claims to be the person that broke the news that Super7 would no longer be doing vintage toy-inspired Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Ultimates figures. That was exciting news at the time. I actually remember when it was posted. But the two waves that followed the initial Reddit post both had vintage toy-inspired Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. So I reached out to this person and I was very polite with them. They were very polite back to me in return. And the first question I asked them was, hey, when you posted that and said that they would no longer be doing Playmate stuff, they started doing Playmate stuff. So can you tell me if something changed in the time between your post and Super7's solicitation? And the person responded that yes, that at the time that they posted, this information was true, but eventually Super7 went back to Viacom and Nickelodeon and they were able to work out some kind of deal. The second question I asked them had to do with the Simpsons Ultimates Wave 3, more specifically the Kang and Kodos figures from that wave, because in the post they say that people seem generally happy with those figures and that some of the changes we can expect to see are reflected in the higher quality of those releases. The person who wrote the post indicated that it's the investors that have driven this decision to have better quality figures, more articulation, all that stuff. If you've been paying attention to Super7 stuff, you would know that Wave 3 of Simpsons Ultimates was solicited back in June of 2022. So, 22 months ago, which is a long production timeline. I think nobody's happy about that. But the investors got involved last year with their investment of $12 million up to $25 million. And you'll notice that the Reddit post says that the investment was $37 million, which means that the Kang and Kodos figures were solicited 13 months before the investors got involved. And we've heard from Kyle, from Brian, that these figures are designed about 3 to 4 months before they go up for solicitation, just to allow for approvals and just time frames, which means that these figures were designed well over a year before the investors ever got involved. So I asked the Reddit author, with Kang and Kodos being solicited so long ago, when exactly did these investors get involved and when did these changes start getting implemented in the pipeline? And to this, the person said they can't answer the question, they don't have the information. I then asked them my third and fourth question. My third question being, do these changes only apply to Ultimates? Because that's all that is really discussed in the Reddit thread. But the Ultimates are just a small fraction of the figures that they put out. They put out Reaction, they put out Super Cyborg, they put out Super Size, they put out, Super Shogun, Super Soapies. They put out tons of stuff. Ultimates is not very many of those products. And then I asked them if anything they knew had repercussions for the Godzilla line, because I'm a nosy little hoe. And to this, they had no answers for me. While this person has been very polite and cordial in our conversations, you can see now that Brian has officially responded to the statement, this person is being rather aggressive in their replies to other commenters. They're even doing, I guess, what I would call a light doxing of people by mentioning their full name in their responses. So at this time, I will pause and give you a second to reflect and think about whether or not you think that this poster is authentic, whether you think the information they are sharing is legitimate. If you ask me, I wouldn't pay any more attention to this Reddit thread. The investment numbers are wrong. Their timeline regarding the investment and the Simpsons Wave 3 that they talk about is wrong. Their post about the vintage-inspired TMNT Ultimates was outdated basically immediately by Super7, and their reasoning is that, yeah, well, something changed after I posted that. And overall, I think that this really speaks to the importance of doing your own research and coming to your own conclusions. The amount of people that just took this post as the absolute truth without really digging deeper is quite alarming, but I guess it's sort of typical for the internet. I think that we as customers need to be open to the idea that there is more to the story than we are being told or than what is being provided to us. And that is something that I will probably elaborate on my next video, depending on how things go. So that's it. Quick Friday video for you. Have a great start to your weekend, and I will talk to you again soon.